Joining me now is the senior editor-at-large at Newsweek, Josh Hammer. Josh, let's start with affirmative action. Everyone from the president to the crazy wackos on MSNBC is outraged by this decision, but the overwhelming majority of Americans back it and back it strongly.
Rita, last week something very interesting happened in the affirmative action case. The U.S. Supreme Court stamped out the last legitimate remaining vestige of systemic racism in America. Now, I take the left at their word. Maybe that's my problem, but the left has been clamoring to end systemic racism in America ever since the George Floyd Antifa Black Lives Matter riots of 3 summers ago. But affirmative action has been way overdue to be held unconstitutional for many years now. This has been 4.5 decades. The Supreme Court has gone down this terrible rabbit hole starting in a 1978 case called Bakke. It was reaffirmed and tweaked slightly in a 2003 case called Grutter. Finally, they have upheld the colorblind ideal of Brown versus Board of Education, the famous desegregation case, and they have said that this is unconstitutional. Now, like you said, this is one instance where the Supreme Court is actually a lagging indicator of public opinion here in America. Most Americans do say that they oppose the race-conscious use of race in higher education admissions, and that actually holds effectively across all racial groups. A poll that I saw recently from YouGov showed that 2/3 of Black Americans, according to this one poll I saw, tell pollsters that they oppose affirmative action. But the point is, Rita, the American regime, the American constitutional order, we have not always lived up to our founding ideals. But our Declaration of Independence, which we are celebrating this Independence Day, this July 4th, and our Constitution, especially our 14th Amendment, which was ratified in 1868 after a very bloody civil war to end chattel slavery. The 14th Amendment and the Declaration establish colorblindness in America. The majority in this case stands for that proposition. The dissenters stand for race consciousness. It is the exact same race consciousness, I would remind the viewers here, that the antebellum slaveholders defended before the Civil War.
Now, not everybody is taking that point of view. Students at Boston University, Josh, this is the law school in Boston University, they've been offered therapy to try and cope with this decision. I mean, this is just astonishing that these are tomorrow's judges and they cannot cope with a Supreme Court decision that the overwhelming majority of the country agrees with and seems just like common sense and decency. What is going on in your universities? It seems astonishing that these kids are so fragile.
It seems to get worse every year, right? I mean, I'm not sure at what point, if ever, tragically, this rabbit hole ends. Boston University School of Law is actually a very good law school, too. It's roughly ranked in the top 25 or so here in the U.S., so that's not too shabby. Look, I mean, my own alma mater, the University of Chicago Law School, a top 5 law school. I mean, after the 2016 presidential election, it was actually just after I graduated. I graduated earlier that year in 2016. I remember reading in an article in some alumni publication. I don't think the school put on an official cry session because Trump won the 2016 election, but it was some student group put it on. And I saw that, I was like, oh my God, I mean, is that the same institution that I just went to for 3 years, full of like rigorous analytical inquiry and logical reasoning and so forth? So Rita, the point here is that all of these once great institutions are tragically going down the toilet, and these crybabies who are coming up through the ranks, who are shouting down speakers. We saw what happened at Stanford Law School, the number 2, if I'm not mistaken, number 2 law school in the country, when they shouted down an esteemed judge on the court that I clerked on, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, Judge Kyle Duncan, a great judge and a good man. He was shouted down by a frothing, rabid mob of left-wing zealots. These people do not want to learn the law. They fundamentally just want to have their priors confirmed by any means necessary. They are not interested in pedagogical inquiry. They are not interested in learning. They are simply interested in social justice at any and all costs and having their prior opinions ratified. It's really a travesty, honestly, but unfortunately, Rita, very little in this bucket of information surprises me at this point.
Well, and that example you cited of that judge being shouted down, the entire thing was led by a member of staff. So it's not just the students, it's the staff that these universities are hiring that are reinforcing that degeneracy. And I hate to see what the legal profession is going to look like in 10, 20 years' time. Now, it's not just affirmative action that the Supreme Court has shut down. They've also slammed Biden's student debt bailout. Here's how the president responded to questions from reporters.
Mr. President, why did you give millions of borrowers false hope? You've doubted your own authority here in the past.
I didn't give any false hope, but the Republicans snatched away the hope that they were given, and it's real hope.
Did you overstep your authority?
I think the court misinterpreted the Constitution.
Josh, is the president in denial here? Is he lying? What do you make of his repeated attacks against SCOTUS?
First of all, that lattermost comment where he said the Supreme Court did not properly interpret the Constitution, need I remind the viewers here, this is not even a constitutional case. It was literally a question of statutory interpretation. The Constitution was actually not invoked. It was a very straightforward case of what national emergency and modify mean under the HEROES Act of 2003. It was a pure statutory case. So he literally does not know what he's talking about. But, not to give too low of a blow, I guess that is befit for a man who graduated in roughly the bottom 10% of his law school graduating class, if I'm not mistaken here. When it comes to the actual substance of the student loan decision, it's very important to clarify what the court said and what it did not say. They did not deny that the federal government in the U.S. has the authority, has the ability to just wipe clean a whole slate of student loans if it wants to. After all, the federal government, unfortunately, in my view, has a current monopoly when it comes to the federal student loan market. So the court did not question that Congress has the authority to legislate that if they want to do so. What they said is that the executive branch, the president, or in this case, the Secretary of Education, could not glom onto an obscure, unrelated statute from 20 years ago to affect a $430 billion transformation of the national economy. And what's funny? What's funny, Rita, is that the majority opinion, Chief Justice John Roberts, very snarkily actually quotes none other than former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who actually said back in July of 2021 at a speaker press conference, she said, some people think that the president can just cancel a student loan. No, that's not how it works. Congress has to do that. So it's a very straightforward opinion. I mean, the only surprise here is that it was not a 9-0 opinion. Again, if Congress wants to get off their lazy butts and actually legislate this, they can. No one is stopping them. The president can just not do so unilaterally.